Greetings, everyone. This is Paul with TearingDownIdols.com, and this is a brief message to officially announce that I'm going to be hosting an online Kingdom Conference, God willing. The date is Saturday, June 18th of 2022, and it begins at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. So mark that on your calendars. Saturday, June 18th, 2022, and it begins at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, the focus of the conference is going to be people who want to learn about the Anglo-Israel message and the relevance and importance of Kingdom today. So please share the links and the numbers in the description with friends and family, or invite them to come over and have them sit and watch and listen with you. This is an outreach effort, so we're going to need your help in getting the word out. If you know someone you've always wanted to share the basics of the Anglo-Israel message with, this might be the thing you need. We're going to try to keep things relaxed, try to have a little fun, and of course, we're going to try to be informative as well. With the times being what they are, we need to start getting increasingly active with the Word of God. The fields are white for harvest. More and more people are growing discontented with the direction the world is taking, and they're looking for answers. This is a chance for us to serve those people. Anyway, this is going to be an approximately 4-hour event. First, we'll have Pastor Matthew Dyer of Christian American Ministries in Louisiana give an introductory message, and then Pastor Kevin Reed of America's Promise Ministries in Idaho will follow up, and then yours truly is going to finish with my own message. And after that point, we'll open up the chat, and people will be able to make comments or ask questions, and Pastor Reed, Pastor Dyer, and myself will respond in real time via video, just off the cuff and relaxed. This should be a lot of fun. There are 2 ways to attend this online conference. One way, and this is the one that I strongly advocate, is to log in through your computer or your tablet or other electronic device via the link in the description. The reason I advocate this so strongly is because it's the best way to get the full experience, because then you'll actually see the speakers and you'll be able to participate in the chat at the end. And you don't have to pay anything, you don't have to set up a profile, you don't have to give any personal information. It's pretty much as simple as clicking the link and you're in. But if you aren't able to use that option for any reason, that's okay. You can still attend by phone. All you have to do is call the number that applies to your location. The numbers are in the description. Then punch in the PIN, which is also provided, and then you'll hear everything in real time. And like I said before, you don't have to pay anything. Attending is absolutely free. Our goal is to reach out to people, as many as we can, with the Anglo-Israel message and the good news of the kingdom. So as I said, please get a hold of friends, family, neighbors, anyone you know who's still learning or hasn't heard the message yet. And even if you already know the message, this conference could still benefit from you. We can always make use of refresher material. That way we can more confidently and in a more informed manner go out and spread the word ourselves. So please, just because this is for beginners, just because this is an elementary thing, don't think this isn't for you. The link, call-in information, all the information you need to know are in the description below. So make sure you read all that. Mark Saturday, June 18th, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on your calendars. We are all very excited about this, and if the reception is good, we're talking seriously about making this a regular thing. You never know. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to shoot off an email to me. My address is tdi@mail.com. We hope to see you there.
Good morning, everybody. Let's open in prayer. Lord Jesus, we love you. We look to you and your word to guide us. The principles are there. We have to follow them, though. They don't do us any good by looking at them. We read your word, it comes into our life, and it leads us. So, Lord Jesus, lead us today. Give us understanding that we don't have. Give us help supernaturally. We need it. Our strength is not good enough oftentimes. But by your Spirit, by your help and guidance, we're moving forward. Amen. I want to say good morning to everybody. I hope y'all liked that in what we showed on fasting. I want to starting a 3-day fast. I began yesterday. It's not the total answer, but between what I'm eating and fasting, it's going to help, I think, in special ways. They say that the answer for cancer is found in fasting. And in about 4 years, they're going to come out with this information. Let's hope and pray so. We know the Bible has much to say about fasting if we would pay attention. So eating less is good for everybody, all of you people. Eating 1 meal a day instead of 2. Or even just eating 2 meals a day rather than 3. I was watching this video the other day and I said, wow, where has this been on fasting? That empowers the individual with this biblical knowledge and what strength you can get from this. If you have hardening of the arteries, diabetes, he's cured people. Cured! He says cured, not digressed it. He says, I've cured, if you will listen to him further, diabetes. Well, who would have known necessarily that fasting and other things could do this? So, we're on this journey in life, all of us, and we have to take certain steps. Fasting is one of them. Fasting helps us. Fasting increases our brains and cells. Our mind gets clearer. We get more energy. So, I encourage you all to start fasting. I have started again on a 3-day fast. I hope to see some improvements. But this will take time. And I thank God for this information. I think it's inspired by the Holy Spirit. Right now, I'm going through some tough times. But there's hope. Great hope. Great hope for all of us. By the Bible, by the leading of the Holy Spirit, And fasting, which has been practiced throughout the pages of the Bible. So I encourage you to follow the teachings of the scriptures on this, and we will all be blessed. All of you that are listening to America's Promise Ministries, I encourage you to start fasting again and write down what changes you see in your life. Is my wife here? Anyway, she was told by this lady, this lady knew this elderly lady, and this elderly lady said with tears in her eyes, how do I improve my health? What do I do? And she says, get off of sugar. And after X number of period of time, she could hardly stand. And all of a sudden she's standing and walking and feeling better. Just because she fasted from sugar. Well, we need to get sugar out of our diet. We need to get carbs out of our diet in many cases. Now, I'm no expert, but I have learned some things from experts. And one of them was on carbs. So we're eating too much sugar and carbs, stop it. It's like those that are smoking. You need to quit doing certain things, and your life, your health will improve. It's like hearing the Word of God. It'll improve us. It'll make us better people. The Scriptures. We need the leading of the Scriptures, but let's be careful how we interpret Scripture. I went to a Judeo-Christian church yesterday. It's full of people, and they talked about salvation. It was, again, a funeral that I went to of an old friend. Good man, but he used scriptures in the wrong way. And if we use scriptures in the wrong way, we're going to come up with the wrong ideas, the wrong results. It's like he quoted Jesus and saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And then he gave an explanation for that was so foreign from what the scriptures really teach. You would think when he was through that Jesus would talk about salvation. Well, it was really talking about the kingdom. Entering into the kingdom, coming into kingdom life. And through information and applying the scriptures, we will come into kingdom understanding and kingdom life. Amen? Amen. So I will at this time turn it over to Kevin, Pastor Reed.
All right, good morning. Before we get started this morning, I've got an announcement to make concerning the online conference that is being put on by Paul Maitre-Jean of Wisconsin, Pastor Matthew Dyer of Louisiana, and myself. It's scheduled for Saturday, June 18th, and what you'll get is you'll get an email invitation like this. It's got a hypertext link on it that will tell you, that will allow you to join online, and it should be taking place at 3 o'clock Central Time on June 18th. I'll also be putting an email into our list and emailing that out to all the recipients in America's Promise current email list, so you will get this as well. Whether you want to attend or not is up to you. And we'll also be putting this information in this newsletter, and I'll also leave a link or a description of it in the video title this morning. So that is Paul Maitre of Wisconsin. Now, for those of you that don't know him, he considers himself an evangelist of the kingdom message, and he is also running a podcast, and he puts videos out on YouTube as well. His YouTube channel is called Tearing Down Idols. So if you want to check him out, I highly encourage that. He's a good man, and he's doing his part to spread the kingdom word. So I know last week we said we were going to get started with the Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, prophetic, and the current old city. But when I was doing my notes, I realized that there was a background story that we need to go through first. So hopefully next week we'll get to the New Jerusalem is not the old Jerusalem. I decided to go with the woman of Samaria from John 4. I feel like this is a better introduction into the sermons that will be given about the old city. I think the old city and the new city will be two separate sermons. We'll do part one will be the old Jerusalem as it stands now, and the new Jerusalem, of course, the prophetic Jerusalem of the Bible. So we'll begin our reading in John 4, and I'll try to sum it up in one sentence as the Fundamentalist Church and the Baptists and everyone else teaches this. What they say is, Jesus meets a Gentile woman by some old well, and then he says salvation is from the Jews. So that's generally how it's been taught, and we're going to try to get the kingdom message out of this little story, and I'm sure you've heard all about the woman of Samaria. I know Matt Dyer did a video as well, but we haven't heard the Pastor Reed version yet, so we're going to go through that very quickly this morning. We'll begin reading in John 4. We'll start at verse 1. When therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself baptized not, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee. And very quickly, I want you to notice here that the baptism here mentioned is the physical water baptism, and this was a physical act done by Jesus' disciples. And as his disciples, we're also to do that. Now, some argue that we don't have the need to baptize in water any longer, and as the charismatic churches teach, this is just now it's a baptism in the Holy Spirit. But no, here in John 4, we see that they actually baptized, and if we don't baptize in water, then we would in effect be ignoring the first couple verses here in John 4. So America's Promise does believe in the baptism of water, as other ministers do. I know Matt Dyer and Paul both do that. So I'd just like to quickly mention that as we go along. Verse 4, and he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. And I wanted to show a map of the journeys of Jesus here. And here's a visual aid. Again, it's from the children's teachings. And here we see that in the south is where Jesus currently is in Judea. And as he moves north to Galilee, of necessity, he is going to travel right through Samaria. And right here is the city Sychar. The Old Testament mentions it as Shechem. So that'll come along later as we go along reading. But that's very quickly the map that I chose to share with you. And any good Bible will have a map in there, and it will show you the same thing. Verse 7, then cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat, or buy food. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. The word Jews here would be of the southern tribe of Judah, or of the southern kingdom of Judah, or a person that dwells in the land of Judea. But we notice here that this woman must be an Israelite because she said her father was Jacob. And notice how she cites her genealogy directly to Jesus here. So she understands who she is and where she's come from. And she says that there's no dealings between Judeans and Samaritans. And that is a big source of confusion to a lot of people. We'll have to consult our Bible history to find out why that is. Samaria was the capital city of the northern 10-tribed Israel. House of Israel, after Solomon's death, the kingdom divides. So Solomon dies, the kingdom divides. It was built by King Omri of Israel, and that's where we get our name Beth Cumri, or Bit Cumri, which was given to us during this Assyrian captivity. This name means house of Omri, and if you can follow the name Bit Cumri, it helps you identify the northern migrations of the house of Israel after our Assyrian captivity. This is all in 2 Kings. The city fell, the city of Samaria, it fell to King Sargon in the year 727 BC, and approximately 27,000 of the people that lived there were deported from the city. Many Israelites had already left, and they were never seen again. This is the northern migrations of Israel across the Caucasus Mountains, and when they settled, they would eventually be known as Saxons in Europe, or sons of Isaac. Isaac's sons, Saxons. Because Sargon conquered many cities and territories, an integrated society formed, and this ended up having the effect of a melting pot religion in the land as well, where the writings of the prophets were rejected and some of Moses' law was applied. So you see here, that is very much likened to Phariseeism, or what we call it today as Judeo-Christianity. So here's where it started. And when Ezra and Nehemiah returned to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, they found these people in the land. Some were Israelites who kept the law. Some were Israelites who followed the paganism of the adulterated word of God, or Judeo-Christianity, the Babylonian mysteries, Talmudism, Phariseeism. And some of the inhabitants in the land still were racial strangers, and some were half-breeds of interracial relationships. So a conflict between the returning Judeans and the people currently living there, called Samaritans, ensued. So Samaritans could be these things: a pedigreed Israelite who obeys God's law and who happens to live in a region called Samaria, an unclean Israelite who heeds to the doctrines of Babylon, a racial stranger, or an outsider, the result of interbreeding. So the Judeans didn't consort with the Samaritans because of this conflict, even though some who were named Samaritans were actually of pure Israelite stock. The Israelites who lived in Samaria worshipped the God of Israel and knew enough prophecy to refuse the Jewish priesthood. Mount Gerizim is also in this region. Because of this, both this mountain, Gerizim, and Jerusalem were the places of true worship to Jehovah God and the false traditions of paganism and the religion of the Pharisees. So we'll keep going in John 4. Now we've cleared up why it is that the Judeans and the Samaritans did not have any dealings with each other. We'll pick it up again in verse 10. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then thou hast that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us this well, and drank thereof himself and his children and his cattle? So this is the second time that we've heard Jacob, the land, and the well. This is the second time it's mentioned, and we better find out its history. We'll go back to Genesis 33, and we'll find out what it is that this woman's talking about and what it is that she knows. So you understand, to find out the rest of the story, we have to consult the Old Testament. That's always the case in the Bible. There's no such thing as a New Testament Christian. So Genesis 33, now this is right after Jacob has escaped Esau's anger. And we look over at verse 18. And Jacob came to Shalem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. That is the city Sychar, we just pointed out on the map. When he came to Padanaram, and pitched his tent before the city. And he bought a parcel of field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. And there he erected an altar and called it Elohi Israel. And that name Elohi Israel literally means the mighty God of Israel. So here's Jacob. He's bought this land. We'll look over at Joshua chapter 24. We'll find out a little bit more about it. Joshua chapter 24, verse 32. And the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel brought up out of Egypt, buried they in Shechem, in a parcel of ground which Jacob bought of the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver, and it became the inheritance of the children of Joseph. So you see here, this land was given to Joseph from Jacob. If we'll look over in Acts 7, we'll find it out again that the writers of the New Testament knew about this history as well. We'll go to Acts 7. We'll read a little bit about this land here, there as well. Acts 7, verse 15. So Jacob went down into Egypt, and died he and our fathers, and were carried over into Sychem, and laid in the sepulchre that Abraham bought for the sum of money of the sons of Emor, the father of Sychem. So you see here, according to Acts, this history is also known. And of course, here in Acts, it also mentions Abraham. So we better go back and find out what Abraham has to do with this land. We know about Jacob, we know about Joseph, but now we've got Abraham in the mix. We better find out how he plays into this. Genesis 23 is where we'll find Abraham. Starting in verse 1, and Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kirjath-arba. The name is Hebron in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham stood up from before his dead and spake unto the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and sojourner with you. Give me possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead out of the sight. So you see here is that, and as we go through this chapter 23, we'll see that Abraham bought the land. And Abraham hearkened, verse 16, and Abraham hearkened unto Ephron, and Abraham weighed to Ephron the silver which he had named in the audience of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, current money with the merchant. And the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was therein, and all the trees that were in the field, and all in the borders round about were made sure. Unto Abraham for possession in the presence of the children of Heth before all that went into the gate of the city. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, the same as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So you see here, Abraham buries Sarah, and we see that he has bought the land. He buys it. So this land has been twice purchased by the patriarchs. Genesis 25, we'll look over there, verse 7. And this is just a history of the land before we go any further. Genesis 25, verse 7 says, And these are the days and years of Abraham's life, which he lived 160 years. Then Abraham gave up the ghost and died in a good old age, and an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre. The field which Abraham purchased of the sons of Heth, there was Abraham buried, and Sarah his wife. So you see here, Abraham is also buried in this field, and according to Genesis 49, this is the last mention, as far as the patriarchs are concerned, of this land where Jacob's well is, where the story takes place. Genesis 49, you see in verse 1, it starts with Jacob giving instructions at the end of his life to his sons. There's 12 of them, and these are very famous verses. We use these verses to identify the marks of the tribes of Israel today. We'll pick it up in verse 29. We'll look there. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought for the field, with the field of Ephron the Hittite, for a possession of burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. So you see, all but Rachel is buried in this land. So this is a very important piece of land where the woman from Samaria and Jesus are having this conversation. All but Rachel was buried. Rachel, according to Genesis 35, she died in childbirth to Benjamin. and she was buried at Bethel. So she was buried at Bethlehem, which was the birthplace of Jesus. So this land was twice purchased. This was the land of inheritance for the children of Joseph, and it was actually located on the border later between the land of Ephraim and Manasseh. So they could both use it as a burial ground for their family members. So we'll go back to John 4 now that we know the history of this land. And according to verse 9, if you look at verse 9, then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And like I've said before, this verse is used to teach that Jesus is talking to a non-Israelite or Gentile woman, and that Jesus himself is a Jew or Jewish. No, this woman is obviously, she's a descendant of Jacob, and since Jesus lived in Judea, he would be called a Jew because he was of the tribe of Judah. This woman, of course, was a blood relation to Jesus, as all Jacob's sons are. We'll keep going in verse 10. Jesus answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee the living water. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us this well, and the children thereof himself, and his children, and his children and his cattle? Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing into everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. So notice the difference between the conversation that Jesus is having with this Israelite woman and the conversations he continues to have with his enemies, the Pharisees. And I'd like to illustrate that. We'll go over to John 5. We'll look at verse 15. John 5:15. The man departed, this is the man Jesus just healed. The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which had made him whole. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered them, My Father worketh hitherto, and I work. Therefore the Jews sought the more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but said also that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. Notice the behavior of Jesus' enemies. Look over in verse 37. And the Father himself, which has sent me, hath borne witness of me. Ye have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his shape. And ye have not his word abiding in you. For whom he hath sent, him ye believe not. Search the Scriptures, for in them ye think ye have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. And ye will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of God in you. I come in my Father's name, and ye receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him ye will receive. How can ye believe, which receive honor one from another, and seek not the honor that cometh from God only? Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuseth you, even Moses, in whom ye trust. For had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me. But if ye believe not his writings, how shall you believe my words? This is Jesus speaking to his Antichrist enemies. He knew who they were. He knew that they hated him, and he knew that they wanted to kill him. This attitude is the attitude of Esau Edom, and it has not changed to this day. Look over in John 8. It's another conversation between Jesus and non-believers. Verse 39. They answered and said unto him, Abraham is our father. Jesus saith unto him, If ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham. But now ye seek to kill me, a man that have told you the truth, which I have heard of God. This did not Abraham. Ye do the deeds of your father. Then they said unto him, We are not born of fornication. We have one Father, even God. And Jesus said unto them, If God were your Father, ye would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech, even because you cannot hear my word? Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer in the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, ye believe me not. Which of you convinceth me of sin? And if I say the truth, why do ye not believe me? He that is of God heareth God's words. Ye therefore hear them not, because ye are not of God. So you see, Jesus is bitterly denouncing his enemies, and he does this at every turn, by the way. And these people that Jesus is talking to cannot hear Jesus' words because they are not of God. Or in other words, they will not heed God's law word. And they will not accept Jesus, who is the Word. Being that they do not accept Jesus, they will not be in the kingdom. That's the fixed gulf we talked about with the rich man and Lazarus. That's also the tares and the wicked servants in other kingdom parables. Babylon herself says she is no widow, that she has no husband. Therefore, there's no wedding for her. She'll not be attending. Jesus told the woman at the well, a believing Israelite, Jesus told her, if you knew who I was, then you would ask of the living waters. And you notice here, Jesus understood that. That's why he says, if you knew who I was, then you would ask about more of the gospel I have to bring. But notice the reaction of his enemies. It's just the opposite. And in verse 15, she does. She says, the woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. So the woman wants to know more. She didn't hiss at him. She didn't try to kill him. She wanted to know more about this man and his words. And the word sir here, interestingly enough, is the Greek number 2962 from the concordance. This word sir is never said to Jesus by the Pharisees, because sir is a respectful title to one in authority. Not only did she have manners, as we all should, but she spoke to him in reverence, as we all also should do. She wouldn't have used Jesus' first name even if she knew it, because she respected his authority, and we should do the same if we respect his position. You see, this woman was not on a first name basis with the king. So that's interesting here, that even though she knew who he was, and we'll find out later she understood he was the Messiah, even though she knew that, she still spoke to him in a respectful title, as we should do. We go and find out, or try to find out, Jesus' real name with some hidden tribal knowledge and pass that around as if we're special teacher's pets, and we're only so lucky to have found this out in the first place, and then we start throwing his name around without any reverence. It's a dangerous place to be. And of course, we don't know his real name, and as mortal men, we'll never understand his real name. And we'll find out more about that later. All right, we'll continue on in John 4. Look at verse 16. We'll pick up there. Jesus saith unto her, Go call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband, and that thou saidst truly. The woman saith unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Here, the woman has just heard her history, and she understands that in hearing her history, it happens to be prophecy. She knows she's talking to a prophet now. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. This is another admission by the woman that she is an Israelite descendant. She says, our fathers, and of course she's talking about Jacob and Abraham and Isaac and the rest, and she's also privy to the information that we just read about in the history, that the Samaritans and the Jews have a conflict, an ongoing conflict. And this is the question that she's asking, and the Jesus' answer is what it is that we're looking for when we go to start the Old and New Jerusalem studies. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for the salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father and in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. So you see here, salvation is of the Jews in verse 22. That's the problem verse here. And now it's taught now in modern churches that if you're a Christian at all, or you know anything about Jesus, you should go over there and think a Jew. But that's not the case. What this is, salvation of the Jew, this is the work of the prophets. This is what Jesus is verifying. Let's go to Isaiah 11 and see what he's talking about. This is of the Jews. And it's very simple. It's a very simple phrase once you get down to the bottom of it. And it's very easy to explain, except it's been twisted nowadays in today's churches, and it's led to much confusion. Isaiah chapter 11, we'll look at verse 1. And there shall come forth a rod and out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord, and shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity the meek of the earth, and he shall smite the earth with a rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked, and righteousness shall be his girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. So we understand that is Isaiah writing about Jesus Christ who is to come. And then look over in verse 10 as another one. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles, or other nations, to it shall the nations seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And there's that rest again. There's the rest of the kingdom, the rest of the Christian life. And to verify what it is that Isaiah is saying, we'll have to go all the way back to Ruth. We'll go to Ruth chapter 4, and we'll start at verse 18. And here in verse 18, you see that the generations of Pharez, and you see Pharez beget Hezron, and Hezron beget Ram, and Ram beget Amminadab, and Amminadab beget Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. And we understand that Pharez is the twin son of Judah, the same tribe that Jesus came from. Now, we understand that David's greater son is Jesus the Christ, so it's, according to the prophecies, Jesus was to come through the Davidic line, which he did. So a Savior was to come from the tribe of Judah, and that's all that means. Salvation is of the Jews, or a Savior is to come from Judah. And of course, Jesus fulfilled that. That's all that means. It's very easy. It doesn't have anything to do with the old city or the old people being the Savior of the world. And you see here, Jesus says, when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. The old city and the old temples that were used as Israel's places of worship had come to an end. This would happen after Jesus' death and resurrection. Now, how is it that we worship today? We don't have the old cities and we don't use the old high places. We worship today where two or more are gathered. We worship God. He is among us when that happens. The kingdom is at hand and among us. That's what Jesus said. God is spirit, and as such, he cannot be quantified by mortal men. He cannot be measured, seen, or named in our current mortal minds. You remember Moses couldn't even see his face because he would have been killed immediately. But no, there's people here that believe that there is a name that can quantify God in our mortal minds, and they go with that. And they act like that is the way to salvation. But you understand, we will know and understand God's true nature only after we're made as gods. That's after the resurrection, not before. So, yes, God is spirit, and as such, our mortal minds cannot name that. We couldn't hope to name that. And I would advise you guys and you good people here not to make a religion out of a name. I'd rather err on the side of caution with the commander-in-chief and just call him by his respectful title. Sir, Lord, Jesus, King. Now, Jesus is not so weak that when you say the word Lord, he mistakes it for Baal. He knows his children's voice. His children know his voice. So call him whatever it is that you are comfortable with in reverence to him, in reverence to his authority. God has many names. Why settle on one? We worship God in spirit and truth here. No more sacrifices, no more mortal high priests. Old Jerusalem is finished. That all ended with Jesus. We'll go back to our story here, John 4, verse 25. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. Now, how in the world did this woman know that a Messiah was to come called Christ? She must have been reading her Bible. Notice this is not a Pharisee. She's been reading her Bible and she's been looking for a Messiah. And it wasn't the 1611 King James either. She must have been reading her Old Testament, which again means that you can find out all about Jesus before you ever get to the book of Matthew. Because you understand, the book of Matthew and the rest of the books had not yet been written at the time of this conversation. So we must understand this woman had been reading the old scriptures, or at least she'd been learned enough in it to know that a Messiah was to come. Remember, Jesus said, Moses wrote of me. So she at least had a small knowledge of what Moses said because she was already looking for a Messiah called Christ. Again, the old scriptures are the way to Christ. Just as this woman said, she understood that from just having a copy of the Old Testament. And I will mention that there was somebody in our congregation. I was mowing the yard Tuesday, and he'd stopped by, and he swung by the church, and we said hello, and he said he was swinging by to grab his Bible he'd left Sunday. And I thought, well, now that is something. You don't see enough of that in this age. Someone had taken the time to come out of their way to swing by the church and pick up his Bible, because without it, he knew he was unarmed. He knew he couldn't be edified. He wouldn't be at peace or find out more about this rest we've been reading about without his Bible. Now, I'd like to know how many of you young people today would swing by church to pick up your Bible. I hazard to say most of you would just leave it here because the only time you're going to open it again would be next Sunday. Now, if it was a phone, a cell phone, or a wallet or something, you'd have broken your necks to get it. But no, he swung by and he got his Bible, and that didn't go unnoticed. I saw that. And we need more believers like that. We need more people that feel naked without this book at arm's reach. All right, so we understand that this woman here, and what she said, she is symbolic of true Israel. She is symbolic of true Israel's state and true Israel's current condition. She is speaking to Jesus in Joseph's land. She's actually an Israelite hidden by another name, in this case Samaritan. And because of her other name, most people believe that she is an unclean Gentile. She is a divorced and put away woman or wife. Now, why was Israel divorced? In the Old Testament, we were divorced for being an harlot, for going a whoring after other gods, or living with other husbands. No, this woman here is obviously Israel awaiting her Messiah in the land of Joseph. Jesus says in verse 26, Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. Jesus said, I am the one you wrote about. I'm the one who is to come and redeem you. That's what Jesus verifies to this woman. Now, how is it that the Pharisees reacted when Jesus said that? When Jesus said the very same thing he just told this woman to his enemies, the Pharisees, they gnashed their teeth. They charged him with having a devil. They called him a devil. They called him a blasphemer. They tried to kill him and eventually did. How many of you have ever tried to share the good news of the gospel of the kingdom in this manner? You've told someone who they are and where they came from, and you've used prophecy all the while, just as Jesus here did, used prophecy all the while to prove that the Bible teaches that Jesus came to redeem, and that word means buy back, which means he had to have had them in his possession to begin with, that Jesus came to redeem his children, the lost, that word means cast off, house of Israel. And you get this reaction, the gnashing of teeth, the hissing, the swearing. If you receive this sort of reaction in your own life, you can be sure that they do not heed God's word, his law, or his instructions. They are not of God. Israelite or not. Israelite or not. How many have you ever gotten this kind of treatment when you've tried to spread the good news? And from whom? Other Israelites. I doubt very seriously any of you are going out and trying to tell non-Israelites or racial strangers that they're actually Israel. The Bible calls that casting your pearls before swine. No, we've had this happen from our fellow kindreds, our brethren. This doesn't suddenly make them the literal or physical spawn of the red devil or Lucifer or even talking snakes. It's what Jesus said in John, that they are not of God, they cannot hear his word. They cannot hear that because they are not for God. They won't have anything to do with him. If you're a lawful Israelite, then you belong to God. If you're an unlawful person, Israelite or not, you dwell in the enemy's camp among Esau. By their fruits, you'll know them. You see, and that's the difference between Jesus' enemies, Pharisees, Esau, Edom, unclean, law-breaking, unrepentant Israelites, and those that would have Jesus as king. So, as a matter of fact, I was talking to Pastor Dyer, and someone called him a devil after he gave a sermon. This reaction is a classic Pharisee reaction. Do you remember they called Jesus and Beelzebub and all that? And I would have to say, if you call someone a devil and you mean it, it must mean that you actually believe in the devil and that he is a God that you should fear. So let's get our theology straight here. And of course, my advice to you, Pastor Dyer, is to hand this person over to the workers of darkness and workers of iniquity. Dust off your coat and move on. And then go out and tend the good soil. Tend the good soil because it's the only place you're going to find good fruit. Good soil. And don't be mistaken. God will be glorified in Israelites' belief, and he will also be glorified in the Israelites' non-belief. The Bible says that many, many times. This person that called Pastor Dyer they were an Israelite, of course. And they don't know it, but we do. But they're actually, what are they? Well, they're a secret disciple of Baal. They're a double agent. And all they're doing is trying to cause friendly fire among our camp. Leave those people alone. They're not going to learn anymore. They're set in their ways. They won't have Jesus. They have a portion of their Bible that's their favorite verses. And anybody that says anything otherwise is a devil, like Matt Dyer said. He got called. But that is a classic Pharisee reaction. And all the Pharisees are nothing more nor less than non-believers who won't have Jesus' authority over them. So they were not of God. They were of what? The devil. Well, what's that mean? Well, they were of the enemy. They were of Babylon. They follow her doctrines. They go her way. That's their truth. And of course, like Jesus said, we bring the real truth and we will be their enemies. So Matt Dyer, I think it's good and fitting that you're called the enemy when you're doing nothing more nor less than bringing the truth. And we're with you. All right, John 4. Let's go to verse 28. The woman then left her water pot and went her way into the city and saith to the men, Come see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is this not the Christ? What did this woman do after the revelation of prophecy and Jesus Christ the Messiah to her? She immediately went out and began to evangelize, just as the Great Commission states. She was made a believer in the Messiah by the revelation of prophecy, by someone coming along and telling her her history. And we'd better check that prophecy ourselves to see if it holds true and see if it isn't something we can use among our fellow Israelites and maybe have them turn to Jesus and be believers in him as well. Isaiah 51, we'll start in verse 1. Hearken to me, ye that follow after righteousness, ye that seek the Lord. You notice here, in the first part of this verse, this is addressing Christians. This is addressing people who are lawful. Look unto the rock whence ye are hewn, and to the hole in the pit which you are digged. Look unto Abraham your father, and unto Sarah that bare you, for I called him alone, and blessed him, and increased him. So he's telling us to look back at our history. Look back to where you came from. And then he tells us why. For the Lord shall comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places, and he will make her a wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness shall be found therein, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. Jesus tells us to go back and look at where we came from, because he plans to do something with us and the kingdom. You see, Jesus will reveal all things to us through his prophets. That's what he said. All the answers can be found in the prophecies. And just like he told the woman in verse 29, all things that ever I did is what the woman said. So he was telling her, this woman knew who Jesus was because of her history. You see how important it is for us to know our history, to know our prophecy. And let's be honest, after Genesis 25, this book is only about one people. This is our family history. The thing is, this family history is not taught today. And as a result, we don't know that Jesus was to come to Israel. We don't know what he was going to do with Israel. We don't know what he plans to do with Israel because of our ignorance in the law and the prophets. And the thing is, if our history is taught at all, it's taught as another people's history. It's taught as Jesus' enemies' histories, the ones who murdered him. And they say, oh no, this is not your history. This is the Jewish people. You Gentiles ask the Jewish rabbis what all this means, and they'll explain it to you. That's Babylon talking. Because Babylon knows what happens when we understand our history. Babylon knows what happens when we understand that Jesus is our King and our Messiah. Because the first thing we're going to do as Babylon starts to crumble is we're going to drive the Jew out. And that's exactly what happens every single time Anglo-Saxon Israelites are turned to the word of truth. They drive the enemies out. And of course, Babylon, we understand that her and her ilk are the enemies, Antichrist, enemies of Jesus. That's why it's important, because without our identity, we don't understand what we're to do next. And of course, like the Lord said here, he shall comfort Zion. He's going to do something about us in the kingdom with our future. The only way to find that out is, of course, to go back and check our past. Back to John 4, we'll look at verse 39. And many of the Samaritans of that city believed on him for the saying of the woman which testified, he told me all things that ever I did. So when the Samaritans were come unto him, they besought him that he would tarry with them, and abode there 2 days. And many more believed because of his own word, and said to the woman, now we believe, not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the Lord. This woman's testimony about prophecy caused other Israelites to receive the gospel, and they in turn became Christians. Now I'd like you to notice here in these verses, there is an obvious absence of a Baptist altar call, or any modern day church ritual that's observed now over the Word of God. And you see here, apparently it's possible to know all about Moses, and as Moses points the way to the prophets, and as the prophets point the way to Jesus, and then you understand that Jesus did fulfill the words he spoke of in the prophecies, and then you become Christian. This is the same exact point we've been talking about for weeks now, that you read about Jesus in the Old Testament, you read about Jesus in his holy prophets, you read that he kept his word and that he will keep his word, and that he is in control of the future, and that's what makes us believers in him. That's the hope he gives us. That's the peace. That's the rest. To know, what did we learn in Sunday school? That he has the whole world in his hands. And I guess it's true, because this woman knew it, and it comforted her enough to become a believer. Not that she wasn't before she met Jesus, but she certainly knew enough about it after Jesus had talked to her that she was definitely a believer then. And of course, the other people in the city verified what she said, and then they had something that we don't have today. They had a physical talking Jesus with them. Now, we have a physical talking Jesus every time we open this book, because Jesus is the Word. That's one name I can go with. He's the Word. And if you can understand all the Word, then I guess you can start looking for another name. But until then, the Word is good enough for us. Knowing our history is vital to understanding God's Word and his prophecies to us. Knowing who we are helps us to find out what it is that God plans to do with us, the people of this book. And you see, next week we will study this Jerusalem and what it is that God plans to do with it. Because God has plans for that old city over there in Palestine, as well as a prophetic Jerusalem that you can read about all through this book. And then, of course, where Zion is, the Tower of David, the flock, all of these things have something to do with prophetic Jerusalem and the old city. And we'll try to straighten this out because I think that Babylon has gotten her hands into that teaching as well, and it has led to as much confusion as we've found in this story here. So we're going to straighten this out before we move on. And I know it may be review to a lot of you, but you have to understand, with this online conference, and with the conferences that go on later this year, and with the people I'm working with, we are getting more and more new believers that want to know more. It doesn't hurt us at all to review. And we need to start with these guys as if they've never learned the Israel message, they've never known about it. Sometimes that's the case. So we're going to go through this, we're going to build little by little with repetition, and then we'll all be a gun in the fight. We'll leave no man behind. So we'll understand God is moving upon the earth. He's working with and working his children, Israel, every day. God is not dead. He's still very interested in the affairs of his children. And as such, we should continue to move on and continue to read this book because apparently all the answers in life are found here in the prophets. And we stress that so much here at America's Promise because that gives us the rest. We don't fear the future. We're not prisoners to that. And that's all I have, folks.